Hello guys and welcome back. We are going to be going through a new workout today from my new app BiaFit. We've got brand new programs, we've got brand new exercises, and I am here at one of my favorite gyms in Tampa. In fact, this is the biggest crunch in all of Tampa. So I'm going to be spoiled for choice today when it comes to all of the exercise selections. So we're going to go through, take a look at some of the programs, exercise selections. We're also going to be able to make some adjustments to this program using our features. But most importantly, I want you to learn, I want you to enjoy this workout, and hopefully you can take some of this away and apply it to your own training. So let's go and get started. So first up, we're gonna start with one of my favorite pieces of equipment. Now, I don't have access to this in all of the gyms that I train at. So today it's definitely gonna be one of those situations where I'm gonna go into my app, I'm gonna replace that exercise because I love this. So the original exercise that I was supposed to do today in my program was a Smith machine front foot elevated reverse lunge. Bit of a mouthful. It's a unilateral exercise. So obviously I want to replace it with something that's also unilateral and targets the same muscle groups. So this is going to be hitting the glutes, big stretch through the glutes in this exercise, and it's also going to target your quad. But in my experience, when I pull up sore after a workout from doing this particular exercise, it's usually heavily focused on the glute. So to me, that kind of suggests that when I'm doing this exercise, when I'm taking it to failure, it's actually the glute muscle that's doing a lot of the leg work here. So I'm gonna go ahead and set it up, do a few reps, and then maybe talk a little bit more about it. Oh yeah, this is a nice warm up, okay. Oh, I love this machine so much. So I'm just gonna do a little bit of a warm up here. So this is a nice lightweight. Usually when it's the first exercise, I'm gonna do 3, maybe 4 warm-up sets, just kind of gradually making my way up to my first working set. So one of the cool things about this machine is that you can adjust the seat. So the further back you have this seat, the less stretch you're gonna get in your glute, and you're probably gonna have a little bit more quad activation. But I've brought this seat all the way forward. So I'm basically like sitting up here, like, gotta get my legs in by my chest for this one, but that really helps stretch your glute. So it's one of the great things about this. A lot of flexibility in how you perform the exercise. I think we might be going up to 4 plates today. All right, another 5 reps. So today's program, let's go take a quick peek at the app. So we're going to be doing 3 sets, 12 repetitions. Now, rep ranges are important, but less important. let me clarify. So if you are somebody that cares specifically about strength, if you want to get really strong, then 1 to 6 reps is kind of where you want to focus. But when it comes to hypertrophy, whether you do, say, 8 reps, so that's on the lower end, all the way up to, gosh help, 90 repetitions. There have been studies that look at high rep sets under light load, and you're actually able to achieve really similar outcomes. So not that I would encourage you to do 90 sets, that's a really inefficient way to train, but rep range is a lot less important. Ultimately, as long as you are getting close to failure, so in that RPE 7 to 10 range, you're going to be getting the most out of it. So if you put on a weight, for example, and you've completely misloaded it, which I'll do that quite often if it's a new machine, if you're way off failure, just keep going. Like if you don't want to waste more time like loading more weights and doing extra sets, I'll often just keep going until I get close to failure, and then I'll adjust it for like my 2nd or my 3rd set if I had to go to an ungodly amount of numbers or repetitions. So let's try this. Yep, that was good. All right, that's probably sitting at like an RPE 8. So technically I'm kind of in that range where I'm effectively signaling muscle growth. But if I was feeling really energetic, I had a lot of sleep, something I haven't had a lot of lately, I'd probably take the 8 up, but I'm honestly really happy with that right now. I think 8 is a good number for me. It's very unusual these days for me to push something truly to failure, just because I'm always running on fumes and very low sleep, high stress. So ultimately I still want to stay healthy and injury free. So there's not a whole lot of additional benefit to me pushing to failure right now. This is a really good, comfortable weight. Challenging, obviously I'm dying, and I definitely got very close. So, all right, I'll do one more set and then we'll move on to our next exercise. 5, 6, 7, good. 8, come on, almost there, 2 to go. Oh wow, nice, okay. So this is a great example. The rep range was 12. Sam got to 12. He's like, yeah, this is still a little bit too easy. I'm nowhere near RP 7 or 8. So he just kept going. I think he probably got, what, 17 reps? Totally fine. Go into your app, change the rep range, or put whatever it was that you did, and then remember that for next time when you go in. One of the things that I often will do is just track my workout, and I've already just realized I forgot to start my watch. So one of the things that I will now try to do a little bit more consistently, now that I'm starting a prep, is to actually not only monitor, I guess, the total amount of time that I'm working. Again, it's helpful from an efficiency perspective as well, but I'll look at the total calories. So the Apple Watch, if you can see here, one of them says active calories, the other one says total calories. I personally like to track total calories. The only time I'll ignore it is if I, was busy chatting with somebody and my watch was still running, and then I'm potentially just capturing energy expenditure that I would have otherwise expended standing around. But if I'm just on my own, if I'm focused, I'll look at the total calories, and that's kind of what I'm trying to monitor session to session, just to make sure that things are consistent week over week. What's likely to happen as I get further and further into that prep, and I'm more tired, and I'm also a lower body weight, so I'll have less body mass, I'm probably not going to be expending the same calories anymore. So if I'm trying to keep a consistent calorie deficit week over week, I'm gonna have to start to do a little bit more to make sure that I'm still burning the same amount of calories. So it is frustrating. The leaner you get and the more of a deficit you want to create, you have to do a little bit more, which is really frustrating, but super helpful. If you haven't got an Apple Watch, I would highly recommend getting one. All right, that's that exercise done. So this is the glute room. There are so many options, but right now I really want to try and hit my glute medius, so like the upper shelf. So let's just walk through and have a quick peek at what we got here. So we've got this kind of half hack. This is a really great exercise for quads and for your glutes, but we've just toasted my glutes on that last machine. So I'm gonna give those a little bit of a break right now, but this machine would be so awesome. I can't wait to use it. I've actually never used this one. This is a belt squat. I'm guessing that we'd probably attach this would go around your body, and we'd link it up and we'd squat away. Again, another really good glute max exercise. Oh yeah, you could do this for RDLs too, so that you can come back and target your hamstrings. Obviously this is not quite the muscle group that I want to work, but we're definitely gonna film this at some point in a week or so. Coming over here, we've got another variation of a hip thrust. This is a booty builder range. This one's okay. I do like it better than the other, like original booty builder, but I feel like just looking at this, it's got a really low seat and a really high back, but it doesn't go up. So again, just thinking about a small person, there's a lot of distance here for your body to have to try and cover. I just don't feel like it probably works very well, but we'll give it a go. The machine I do want to use though is this one here. So this is their abduction. So it's a standing abduction. We're going to hop in, get settled, and you're coming out. Okay, I want to show you something. If you come in here, so if I position myself kind of a long way away from the handles, so I've got my arms outstretched, you notice that only a small amount of my leg is touching the pad here. So that position there, that's really challenging. It's heavily loading my glutes. I don't really have a whole lot of leverage here. So if you were going to do this exercise with your knees basically only half touching the pads, you wouldn't need a whole lot of weight. Like this is really challenging. I'm probably only gonna be able to do like, I don't know, 5 or 6 reps. But if I come in and now I've got more of my knees, so see here how I've got much more of my leg on this pad, I'm so much stronger. I've got so much more leverage. So I'm gonna be significantly stronger. Like this is like baby weights. Sorry, just because a slight adjustment of how you put yourself into a machine can make a really big difference. So I actually like the movement a little bit better here. This feels more comfortable, so I'm gonna do it that way. And I will put some weight back on. Whilst you do that, I will chat.
Maybe on YouTube wants to see.
So one of the things that I have been focusing a lot on, obviously, all of my off season, and of course I will continue to focus on this as I go through prep, is hitting my medius. Sorry, if I'm to look back and reflect on all of my programs, I've always done a great amount of volume on my glutes, but it's probably been disproportionately focused on my glute max, which is this muscle here, less on my glute medius. Sorry, my programs now, when I go through and like do them, it's kind of very repetitive because there's only so many ways that you can hit your glute medius. But I have seen some major changes just in as short as 7 or 8 months since my last competition, just by really focusing on that abduction. So yeah, I think I'm really excited because there's so many more companies coming out with new machines like this standing hip abduction. For so long, like all we had access to were either bands or like a very simple machine. So yeah, it's great that we've got lots of new options available, but you have to be in a big gym or a facility like this to be able to get them. So hopefully you guys can eventually get access to them in the gyms that you are training at as well. All right, so that was pretty high rep rate. It was 25. So I might add a little bit more weight just to kind of get through this set a bit faster so that it brings it back down to like 15. That's kind of like, it's my favorite number to work towards. You get a little bit of that pump, but it's not too much. Look at that butt. But I've got brand new white shoes on and I feel like every time I glance down, I'm like, oh God, they're so white. That's better, 15. So like, I'm obviously taller than Sam.
What's a shoe?
It's the shoes. Put your arm out. Look at this difference in like a measurus. It's so dumb. The last exercise that I've got in my program today for glutes is another medius exercise. So just consider that when if you're somebody that's doing your own programming, maybe you're not using an app or even my app, you probably want to avoid doing too much volume in a single session on the same muscle group. The reason for that is once we get to say 6 or maybe even 9 sets on that one muscle group, we're probably not getting any additional hypertrophy benefits. It's kind of like just diminishing return. So once you've done about 6 or 9, you want to move on to another muscle group. Now, you could do more, don't get me wrong. Like I've done plenty of sessions in my life where I've done like, I don't know, 20 sets on like quads or something like that. It's not that you can't do it, but you're not having any extra benefit in terms of muscle growth. Then you're just burning calories. So you might notice in like some of my programs, I'll put like a bit of conditioning at the very end and it's more jump squats or box jumps or burpees and just other exercises that are hitting my quads again. So in those circumstances, what I'm just really trying to achieve is some kind of energy expenditure. I'm trying to burn calories to help me stay in a deficit for my fat loss phase. So it's not that those particular exercises are contributing meaningfully to muscle growth. It's just you're burning a lot of energy doing that. So this will be the last exercise that I do on my glute medius. I'm going to use my band for this, but I need to go and find a bench. So let's go and do that. Before we move on, I probably should show you the rest of the booty equipment since it's all here. Sorry, this one you probably see me do at the lab. We actually have this a seated hip thrust. So is this the same brand, Sam, or is it different? You've got a different brand, I think. So one of the things that's really important in this seated machine, see how right now the pads are like halfway up my thighs? This is a really dangerous place to put the machine, you want to make sure that you pull it out so that it's like right in the crease of your hip. And Sam is patiently waiting to send me these. You can also put these under here as well. So that'll give you a little bit of extra padding. I usually just whack them in here. Sit down, straighten your legs, I suppose, to do that. Yeah, that's much more comfortable. And then coming through. So you kind of almost, like I keep my back quite rounded when I do this exercise. So I can get maximal glute squeeze. Like I'm trying to get the muscle from the longest position to the shortest position, a full range of motion. So shortest position, that's the longest stretched position. See, I love this exercise. It doesn't have nearly as much spinal loading as some of our other hip thrust movements or glute maximus exercises. Does this come up? Yes, we're getting there. I have not used this one before. I'm gonna come down in your hinge position. You hold on to the handle and then rounding your back, tucking your chin. This is another glute max exercise, but I'm not really able to get into a fully lengthened position here. So for me, this is like a partial rep, unfortunately. So it's not my favorite. I hear a lot of people rave about this machine, but my glutes don't get into a lengthened position at all. So I don't know whether there's a way that I can manipulate this to do that. But yeah, I feel like I'm so flexible. So you notice like I'm just kind of doing a little bit of a movement, but I do like it. I'm sure there are some folks that have used this and you love it. Like you're getting a really good stretch through your glutes. Okay, so this is the same as the first booty builder that I shared with you before that I wasn't overly keen with, but it's pin loaded, or as Sam referred to it, selectorized. Yeah, I don't know whether I like these. I feel like there's a lot of weight above your center of gravity here. So the seat, see how like hyper extended my back is? Like to me, I just don't like this machine. Some people might find it really comfortable. Like this to me would be a good starting position here. But like, this is how far I've got to come down. So like my spine just feels like it's like, they need women to come and play around with them when they're building them. Because that would be probably fine for a large gentleman. But it's the pin loaded booty builder. This, okay, here's another problem with gym equipment. When you set this up, so this big link, this is the one that's supposed to latch on to like these hooks, which is nice. So that's very secure. Once you put tension on it, that's secure. But this is my range of motion. So like, hang on, let me take the weight off. My range of motion is very limited here. So ideally, what I would have loved to have seen is like an adjustable, like I would want this somewhere up here. What? It's adjustable. Get out of here. This is why we have men in our lives, because things are adjustable. You just got to tinker with it, apparently. God, I hate you right now. So what I would have loved to have seen is an adjustable cable. So see how now that it's shorter? So now I can get really good range of motion. So now I'm closer. I feel like we need a tutorial just for how to undo this silly thing. So now, oh, look at that range. Look, see now I can get down like into a much lower position. So now I'm need to prove myself that I can actually do this. It has a swivelly thing. You unswivel it, yeah. Okay, you keep unswiveling it. It's rinky. Yeah, maybe we'll have to, give me 5 minutes, guys. So the exercise that we're supposed to be doing next was this banded clamshell. That's not one of my favorites. I do it for more of a warm up and just some glute activation. So when I select replace, I will see all of the other exercises in our library that target the same primary muscle group. So I'm gonna come in and choose the one that I want to do. So the one that I wanna do is this seated glute abduction. So I'm gonna just hit swap exercise, and we're gonna be doing 30 repetitions here. Depending on how strong my glutes are feeling today, I may end up needing to go a little higher. And remember, like I said before, the rep range is less important. I want you to get close to failure. So the repetition range that I have prescribed for a banded exercise, you're like, Holly, do you even have glutes? you might need to do way more. Just go and put your rep range that you did in the app and then, you know, try to progress from there. So I'm gonna come down. So this is a supine hip abduction. So I'm keeping my shoulder blades kind of comfortably on the back of the bench here. You could use a regular bench too. I just kind of drop my hips down a little bit and then you're just doing an abduction. So I feel like when you're in this position, it kind of takes away the use of your quads. I get a little bit less glute maximus work in this position. So it's isolating my medius a bit more. So I'm gonna have to do a high number of reps. That's fine by me, I don't mind it. It's a nice pump. But again, when you're tired of doing the same machine abduction over and over and over and over and over again, it's a really good alternative. And I can absolutely go to failure. I'm probably at 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 40. Yeah, that was good. You never know what this guy's gonna do. Can you do a handstand on there? Such a show off. I never did any gymnastics or anything when I was a kid. I did dancing, athletics, running, basketball, like all of the things, but never gymnastics. And it's one of those things that I'm like, God, I really wish that I did. It's always so impressive. Like you'll see guys and girls like backflipping and just all of the calisthenics. It's so cool. If you need new bands, go and grab yourself some. We have my Glute Factory bands. I have them in 2 sizes. I really use this a lot, like every session. I'm probably due for another one now. I say every 3 or 4 months, get a new one if you're using it on a regular basis, just because they do eventually lose their resistance and their stretch. So it's harder to challenge yourself. You're obviously gonna need to do even more reps. So for how cheap these are, just get yourself good bands so that you're not having to wait here all day to get to failure. Okay, so the next 2 exercises before we kind of move to the upper body are a leg extension and a hamstring curl. So this particular gym has what I would consider like a rocking hamstring, a seated hamstring curl. I don't love it. So I'm actually going to use the prone hamstring curl today. So there's nothing magical about this particular exercise. I will say there are a handful of studies that have shown that the seated hamstring curl is perhaps a little more effective for muscle growth adaptations. But here's the thing, I think it probably comes back down to how well you're able to get into a fully lengthened position on some of these machines. We've got really like rinky-dink ones at our apartment complex. They're brand new machines, but they just don't kind of fit your body very well. So if you can kind of manipulate and move yourself around into a position where you feel at the beginning of the exercise much more of a stretch on your hamstring, then it's probably fair game. Like the machine is potentially going to have the intended effect. So I'm going to give this a go. I don't know how it's going to feel, but we shall see. So I'm going to put that on the lowest setting over here. So there's 4 settings. If I bring it up here, if I'm to lay down, there is no tension on my hamstrings in this position. So if I adjust it back, so I'm bringing this down closer to the floor, now when I hop in, I should feel pressure immediately on my hammies. Yeah, so there's tension here, which is good. And then I'm gonna kind of slide myself a little bit more forwards as well. That kind of adds to that pressure. So if I was to do the machine how it's kind of intended, you'd be back here somewhere. But again, I don't feel there's no tension on my hamstrings there. So if I bring myself forward, so my kneecaps are almost on the bench. Feels a little bit strange, but now there's good tension on my hammies. So that is a way better position for me. So I'm kind of almost forwards and off the machine, but my hamstrings feel it, so. So one of the things that you want to try and avoid doing is moving a whole lot. If you can isolate this to your hamstrings, excellent. Sometimes you can't just because of how the machine is put together. It's almost like you need leverage to bring it up and to kind of get it into a good position where you feel it in your hamstrings. But if you move around too much, the load is going to end up being in your lower back, not necessarily your hamstrings. So what I'm doing in this position is really thinking about pushing my hips like into the bench. And I'm trying my very best to stay there. So I kind of like brace my core, and then like that way I'm just keeping the tension in my hammies. See if we can go up a weight this time. All right, so see how my kneecaps are kind of on the bench here? It does feel a little bit weird, but like I said, now when I get into that position, I actually have tension on my hamstrings. Whereas if I'm back here and my legs are off, it just does nothing. It's so, my hamstrings don't feel it. So we're gonna go over to the leg extension next. None of my programs, you'll ever see like things written as supersets. They're always just exercise, 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 exercise. And I have had people ask me, Holly, why don't you ever do supersets? And the reason is, you could superset any exercise. It doesn't matter. Supersetting is a choice. It's a strategy that you can implement to basically assist you in getting closer to failure quicker. So most of the movements that I will prescribe are probably anywhere from 60 seconds rest all the way through to 3 to maybe even 5 minutes for like a heavy strength exercise. But if you want to superset, so you go from this movement to that movement, this movement to that movement, you can. You're shortening the rest time between the movements. So you're going to be moving into that second exercise in a slightly more fatigued state. So don't be surprised if the weight that you lift is lower. That's okay. You're not compromising or sacrificing your gains by using less volume in a session, as long as you got to failure and you stayed within the optimal rep range for hypertrophy, which we talked earlier today, 8 and above. So as long as when you do those supersets, you're not compromising the number of reps that you do. So that you're only able to get like 5 reps on the leg extension. Like that's probably not effective. But if you can go back and forth between the two, and you can take that set to failure and stay at like an 8 or above, you're good. It's just a really efficient way to train.
Like supersetting a quad and a hamstring. Well, when you're talking about fatigue, I think it's more even perhaps a cardiovascular recovery.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I suppose when you train your hamstrings, there could be more metabolites in the vicinity of the quads such that you feel fatigue.
Yeah.
But I think it's more, and I think that's probably what you're getting at, the cardiovascular recovery of, because when she finishes a set, her heart rate's always 10 beats higher than mine. Probably because she's training harder than me. That's probably what it is. But your heart rate's usually around, what, 140, 150?
Probably 150 to 70, depending on what the exercise was.
So when you jump back and forth, you're not getting that recovery that you normally get during your rest period.
Yeah, I will say I've definitely done supersets with these two before, specifically the seated leg extension. I always get, leg curl, hamstring curl. I always have like residual like metabolites. I can feel it in the backs of my legs. And then when I come over to do the leg extension and vice versa, I can almost feel the pump on the other side. So that's kind of starting to get, very uncomfortable. So in those situations, again, you want to make sure that you're not recovering for such a short amount of time that it starts to compromise your rep range in the subsequent set. So for this exercise, you'll always see me program 20, 15, maybe occasionally 12. I just really like this exercise performed at higher rep ranges. That's my personal preference. Again, it's not because it's superior. So if you want to do the leg extension, you're like, Holly is madness. Like, I don't know why she likes to do 20 reps and all that horrible feeling of pain in her quads. Like, I don't like that. And you want to do 12 reps, you can very easily adjust my program. Like, do that. There's nothing wrong with it. But I've got a pyramid today. It is 20, 15, 12. So my last set should be the heaviest. So let's just give this a go. Do you prefer low rep ranges or high for this exercise?
Do I prefer low or high?
Yeah, low, high.
I think I almost always prefer low.
And why? Is it because it hurts less?
Yeah, because anything above 8 or 10 is miserable for me.
How about we make Sam do a few little drop sets here? 12 reps. 1, 2, 12 drop sets. Okay, we're going to take it down by 10%. 2, 3, 4. That's a drop set. Just a good luck. 1, 2, 5. I need Sam not to walk later. These little lunges, if you guys watch your heart rate, I'm sure you've probably noticed for certain exercises like unilateral, obviously you're working for a greater period of time. So cardiovascularly, like your body's having to work and push more blood around because there's more reps to be done. But my gosh, I think something like a lunge, when every time I finish that, I'm at like 170 beats per minute or something like that. That's kind of close to what I do when I'm doing a HIIT like spin class. So my max heart rate that I've ever seen on a bike was like 184. And that's like, you can taste the blood in your throat at that point. So 170 during a workout is horrible. Okay, so the next exercise we're gonna do is finishing off on our lower body for today. Oh my God, my body quads. Seriously. The next exercise we're gonna do is a calf raise. So we're gonna use the leg press. There are obviously lots of ways to do the calf raise. Now, there have been a handful of studies come out recently exploring different calf exercises. So we have our seated and our traditional kind of standing calf raise. What appears to be the case at this time, and again, we've probably got half a dozen studies looking at this, is that the standing calf raise perhaps leads to superior outer calf hypertrophy. So if you're somebody that's really looking to kind of fill out the outside of your calf, maybe we can do a little demo here, like this section here, then the standing might be a little better. I still do both the seated and the standing, but I actually much prefer this. And I have to assume that this probably yields similar results to a standing just because of the position that you're in, but there's no spinal loading. So unlike a standing calf raise, it's always my last exercise and I'm always a little fatigued. So I do honestly feel like I have to really concentrate on keeping my core braced just when I'm doing a calf raise. So again, from a safety perspective, I really like this one because there's no like pressure on your upper body or your spine. And you can really get into a lengthened position here. So like that is maximum stretch, which I cannot do on some of the other exercises, especially the seated. I just can't get a good drop and a lengthened position. So if we're thinking about being able to train full range of motion, that is such a good stretch. I've got the wrong shoes on today because it keeps rolling and sliding in my shoe, but yeah, it's a really nice movement. I can see my toes sliding around in my feet. These. Oh, this is why you should wear a proper lifting shoe and not a fashion shoe to the gym. This is the only one that I felt it in today. All right, so FYI, yeah, I'm being super fussy. I'm just moving over to this machine just because it's got the flat bench as opposed to the curved. That curve was just moving my foot around in my shoe, so this will kind of eliminate a little bit of that. This made me wonder, why would a company invent a curved foot plate? Think about it. If you want maximum stability, you don't want your foot all bent up and ganky. You want like solid, flat, good stability. You want to be able to drive really hard. So
I think their thinking there was high foot placement and low foot placement. I don't think they're thinking about the calf. Yeah, but I think you could get a flat foot placement at the bottom or the top, no? Okay. Flaw, design flaw. So if one study came out, and there may be a couple of studies showing that the seated calf raise isn't as good for lateral calf growth, and people want to throw away the seated calf raise. Well, If the seated calf raise doesn't activate the lateral calf, that means it's really good at activating the rest of the calf. So it's probably the ideal way then to grow parts that are being activated, because when you finish that exercise, you know the reason you couldn't do another rep was the medial calf was too fatigued.
It was done, yeah.
So, but thinking oftentimes in science was, this is better than this, therefore this isn't good. And I think that's just a silly way to interpret things. And it's all about sensationalism on social media.
It's interesting to see your ankle mobility and flexibility. There are some big differences between us in like a lot of exercises. Like I was a dancer, so I probably have like hypermobility from years of doing that. But you did gymnastics, sorry, like.
I was a dancer.
He was also a dancer. No, but it makes a big difference. Like when we were trained together, there are certain things that I'll say to Sam, oh, like, are you getting full range of motion? And I think it's partly just due to differences in mobility. Now, I don't know whether that makes a difference for hypertrophy. It seems to be at this time, there's some good evidence to suggest that being able to take a movement through its full range of motion is important. But you know, how do you feel about mobility and flexibility? Like if you were so immobile, if you've got such limited mobility through a joint, do you feel like that would be a limitation on hypertrophy?
Would range of motion be a limitation on hypertrophy? Holly with the hard-hitting questions. I don't think so. I think you can still activate and fatigue the muscle. I think in that particular case, you're limited by your connective tissue. So could a limitation of the connective tissue limit the skeletal muscle fibers from growing? I don't think so. And I'm thinking like we did that new fit study where we just stimulated their muscles with electrical shock. You think of isometric studies that have shown robust growth from just one point in the range of motion. So I don't think so, but I think it would still be good for those individuals to probably practice full range of motion so it doesn't get worse. And it's probably from an injury risk perspective, I'd focus on increasing range of motion.
Well, I like your response. I think we've probably seen many times in research, like you said, you don't even have to take a movement through full range of motion. The study that Sam's talking about is like an isometric hold. So you're basically just squeezing the muscle as hard as you can until you reach failure. And we've seen similar growth adaptations to traditional training approaches where you're taking a muscle through its full range. So yeah, I would agree with that, but it doesn't mean I think it's practical. I can't stand training in a shortened range of motion for a lot of exercises. It's like just this limited range, and I believe you're stronger, correct me if I'm wrong, in a shortened position. So the amount of load that you'd have to lift to effectively challenge that muscle would probably be higher. So from a convenience, practical perspective, I mean, you can lug around a lot more weight, but I also just don't think it feels very comfortable. It feels nice when you can take a movement through its full range of motion. Yeah, I don't think we have enough research yet to say that the shortened is not effective or that the lengthened is not effective.
Contraction's effective.
Yes.
Tension's effective.
Yeah.
And the rest is just stuff to play around with.
You know when you had a thought and it leaves your brain? I just forgot what I was going to ask you. It was a really good question. Rats. All it took was a little bit of movement for me to remember my question. Okay, so recently we've actually just reviewed a paper in our research review Be Brain, and it was looking at bicep hypertrophy, comparing two different exercises. So one was an incline bicep curl, dumbbell bicep curl, and the other one was a preacher curl. And what that study found were that there were some regional differences in muscle growth, where the preacher curl had better distal growth, where the incline curl had better proximal growth, which is, I guess, closer to the upper joint. Thinking about that, so we were just talking about range of motion, and maybe it's not that important. How come then we might start to see studies that are identifying regional muscle growth with different ranges of motion?
That's a loaded question. I'll just give you my take. I'm not too compelled by most of that data. This is coming from the depths of studying muscle growth, and I don't know, I could be wrong here, but when I see a regional difference, to me, it doesn't make that, it's not super compelling, because distal muscle growth is difficult to measure and proximal muscle growth is difficult to measure. And it's easiest to measure growth in the middle of a muscle belly. So like when I see it, I always want to see it replicated. And maybe we've seen it a couple times in the bicep, I guess I'm just not overly convinced that these differences are super meaningful or would make a big difference over the long term. The potential is there, and maybe it's just going to take a few more studies for me to get on board with these ideas. But there's also been a really inconsistent application of logic, and I brought this up on podcasts where the long muscle length people online. So you just, it's all about the long muscle lengths because you get more growth, and a few studies show greater distal growth when training at long muscle lengths. But then it's like, well, if you apply that logic full spectrum, then would not short muscle length training target the proximal aspect? Which is why I think I probably advocate for full range of motion. That seems to be the best bet for training. But yeah, a lot of this data is interesting and it's intriguing, but I think we're far from reaching a point to change how people train based on some preliminary data.
Probably makes sense. I mean, and in that particular study, and hopefully I'm recalling the data accurately. So I think when they actually looked at the midpoint of the muscle, so again, not looking at proximal or distal, I don't think that there were significant differences between those two exercises. It was only the extreme ends of the muscle that actually saw significant differences. So yeah, I think with time, it's going to be really interesting to see and to watch this space. I know I want to learn more about the muscles I care about. So unfortunately, anytime there's a paper that comes out about biceps and I'm like, cool, next. I'm not as interested as if it was a glute paper. If there are regional differences or muscle differences, so some muscles might respond differently, based on how they're put together compared to another. Are there differences? So yeah, I think I'm excited to see where this research is going, but again, for that reason, I don't change my programs when I see one study. I still try to include a wide variety of different approaches, just in case. And it also makes training more enjoyable. If I had to train the same all the time, I probably wouldn't train. So, even if there might be certain benefits to training, in the lengthened position or conversely the shortened position, I'd probably still train full range of motion because I would be so bored doing that same thing over and over. So that's my thoughts. So, all right, next muscle group. We've got 2 exercises left. This is not quite a full body program today. Obviously, I've got many other sessions where I'm making up volume on other muscle groups. So the last is going to be our rear delts. I feel like I just made that heavier. Whew. Overestimating my strength here, guys. I think one of the muscle groups that a lot of people, myself included, have a really hard time activating is your rear delt. So don't be afraid to pull the load way back. So I'm just going to take the load off here and just practice kind of suppressing my shoulder blades to kind of get them away from my ears to reduce trap involvement. So sometimes if you've got the weight too heavy, you start to recruit those additional muscles, which I'm really trying to not grow my traps right now. Sorry. See how I'm kind of suppressing my shoulder blades and then I'm pulling out. And then even between reps here, I'm kind of just cueing myself to bring that back down. Whew. Yep, and that was good. So last exercise, I finally get to wear my wraps and I am so excited. I have just become one of the first affiliates for VersaGrip. This is a brand new program for them, literally last week. So I've been telling them to do this for a long time because I love their product so much. So guys, if you need VersaGrips, if you do not have wraps, you can now get a little discount with my affiliate code. So make sure that you go and check out my YouTube links because somewhere down there in the fine print, you've just got to scroll a little bit. There's a lot of stuff in there, but you will find the affiliate link for VersaGrip. By far my favorite.
You got a code?
I got a code. Yeah, it was this week, brand new. So excited. We're gonna do a Y grip position. I usually squeeze my glutes here just so I don't overly hyperextend my back. And then I'm trying to round my spine as much as I can to get maximal abdominal flexion. God, I haven't done these in a while. Sam is opting for a weighted exercise instead. That's actually a really important thing to talk about. I think a lot of people firstly will always ask me, why don't you have very many ab exercises in your programs? I would probably argue that that's not true entirely. Usually I'll have one or two. But lately, I'm really time poor and I need to be efficient and effective with the workouts. So that's one muscle group that is not that important to me, because here's why. So most people, they want a leaner looking, less flabby, less body fat, you know, in their abdominals. Unfortunately, training your muscles to grow doesn't have anything to do with fat loss necessarily. It can certainly help with fat loss. Obviously, the more muscular you are, the more energetically costly your body is to work. So let's say you go and add 10 pounds, we'll over exaggerate things a little. You add 10 pounds from where you are today and you go out and you do your normal resistance training program. That 10-pound heavier body with more muscle will burn meaningfully more energy to do the same training session that you did with less muscle, like the lighter version of you. So yes, there are benefits to have more muscle, but when it comes to targeting specific areas, that's only going to be accomplished through caloric restriction, so a calorie deficit. You're taking in more than you're expending from day to day. So I know that when I'm at the end of my fat loss phase, I'm going to see the muscle under there. It's not like it's not there, it exists. We just have to get rid of the superficial excess adipose tissue. But some people naturally don't have very deep set tendons in their abdominals. I'm one of those people. So even when I get really lean, I don't have those big deep crevices that you can see on some people where you got to kind of peel your way through just to see they're so deep. Mine is like a washboard. It's straight up and down. So if that was important for what I do, then I'd probably do more weighted exercise, just because, I'd want to grow a muscle, and to grow my abs, I would want to use the same kind of principles of training to grow your abs. So you'd want to use load, you'd want to train it to failure. But generally speaking, if you're doing lots of spinal loaded exercises, multi-joint, or compound lifts, you're already going to be training your core a lot. In a squat, in a deadlift, any overhead pressing movements, you're bracing your abs, you're engaging your abdominals. So I think you can still have a very strong core without doing hours and hours of crunches and pull-ups and hanging things from the sky like I'm doing right now. So this is just fun. I haven't done it in a while. It's challenging me. It's hard to get my toes to my knees. So I'm gonna do it today, but it's not something that I would prioritize if my goal was just fat loss. It's probably the last thing that I would do for fat loss. We're finished. I'm now about to film all of the B-roll for the rest of my videos, for all the educational stuff. And I wrote out all of the potential scripts, and one of them is a paper that we're looking at comparisons between different phases of the menstrual cycle, muscle protein synthesis and hypertrophy, and are there any differences? So be sure you watch that. But one of the prompts, I don't normally like to use AI, but I was I wonder what it tells me to film for a menstrual cycle video. And one of the prompts is show a female in her luteal phase, lifting, and I'm how do I do that? And then the other one was compare with a follicular phase of the training cycle. And I'm okay. Sorry, you can be we'll get you a wig. You can be the other girl. I don't know. Anyway, guys, that is all we've got time for today. If you would like to get access to my new app, so this is BiaFit 2.0. So I know many of you have been following along and know what happened with the previous app. So I'm obviously having to sue that company. It's been really traumatic. The past year has been really challenging, but look, you don't let things like that stop you. So anyway, we are just days away from launching our new product, BiaFit. So it's available on Android and iOS. It has so many features. It has so many more features than what we did previously. So not only has it got all of my training programs, we've got new custom workouts for our challenges. So if you sign up to any of our Love Yourself Fit challenges or our Spring into Summer programs, there's always exclusive new workouts. But of course, you'd still get access to the entire exercise library as well. We've added in all of my recipes. So my entire recipe library, which is 7 books, I think at this point, hundreds of recipes. When you sign up and subscribe to my app, you'll get all of that. You can see the macros, it's got the instructions, everything that you need to have success with your diet. And you know, I like food and things have also got to be simple. So if you love those recipes, we've got new analytics features, we've got volume tracking tools, we've got weight tracking tools, we've got step tracking tools. Like it's all in there. And we also built a new community. So I always feel like I have a hard time connecting with you guys. Obviously YouTube's one place, but it's the comment section. It's just really hard to engage and have a meaningful discussion. So we've got a new community feature as part of not only the normal app. So if you just sign up and subscribe, you can chat amongst everybody. I'll be in there all the time talking, posting, all the good stuff. But we've got our exclusive challenge communities as well, which are even more special. So I am so excited. If you want to get your hands on that, go and look in the description. All the links are available. Again, it's available on Android and iOS. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you found this video informative. I know Sam and I like to chat and go deep, but I want you guys to learn and understand, because there are so many ways to train effectively. And there is so much BS out there about superiority and things being like, you have to do it this way. It's simply not true. There are key things that we need to do and implement in our programs to get effective muscle growth results. But there's a bazillion different ways that we can do that. And I hope that you get to join my programs if you enjoy my style of training. So I'll see you in my next video, guys. Have a great week. Catch you next time.